Good evening and welcome to Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Wine, our Star Trek Deep Space Nine rewatch fueled by wine and a wonky camera. I do apologise. This is a brand new webcam that was working just fine. And the moment we switched on to streaming, it has gone a little bit haywire. So we shall keep an eye on that throughout the stream.
Tech.
Where's the chief when you need him? That's what I say. But yes, this is Deep Space Wine, and this is a rewatch of DS9 with myself, Tim, who saw it when it was first shown in the UK in the 90s, and Kat, who has never seen Deep Space Nine before. And between us, we will go through every episode, which is going to be a long undertaking, and we are going to share our thoughts about it. We will go through it scene by scene and error by error. And, pull it apart and generally tell you what we enjoyed, what we didn't, and we invite you in chat to join us in discussion. And that's basically the setup. And this week, I'm going to hand over to Captain Cat to give us a synopsis of this episode, and I will try and fix my camera in the meantime. So, Cat, over to your good self.
Woohoo! Credit goes to Wikipedia for the synopsis, by the way. We tried a few times writing them ourselves, and it takes so long to synopsize. There's a better word than that, but I can't think of it. An episode. So thanks to Wikipedia for being there for us all. I donate regularly. Deep Space Nine makes first contact with a Gamma Quadrant species known as the Waddy. Upon arriving, the Waddy heads straight to Quark's bar when the Waddy leader, Fallow, who's played by Joel Brooks, is quite brilliant, realizes that Quark has rigged a gaming table against them. He convinces Quark to play an honest game. Meanwhile, the station's senior officers, Commander Sisko, Dr. Bashir, Major Kira, and Lieutenant Dax, find themselves in a bizarre labyrinth. Security Chief Odo realizes that they are missing from the station. He and Quark become aware that the missing officers are part of the game Quark is playing. In the game, the officers are faced with bizarre and deadly puzzles. On the second level, they find a young girl singing a rhyme and playing a version of hopscotch. A force field prevents them from crossing the room until Dax realizes that to get through the force field, they must sing the song and copy her movements. On the third level, they find themselves at a party in a room filling with a deadly gas. Only by drinking the partygoers' drinks can they survive. Later on in fourth level, one piece is removed from the game and Bashir disappears from the maze. Quark is faced with a choice between a shorter, more difficult path or a longer, easier one for his remaining players. He chooses the shortcut, explaining that with risks to his players involved in every move, advancing them home as soon as possible is the wiser choice. However, the results of his next roll forced him to sacrifice one of his players. Quark begs Fallow not to him choose which player to take out, so the game chooses at random. On the sixth and last level, Sisko, Kira, and Dax are faced with scaling a mountain during an earthquake, and Dax's leg becomes stuck between two rocks. Although she tells Sisko to leave her behind, he and Kira help her cross a ledge on the rock face. They slip, however, and all three fall into the abyss, only to rematerialize in Quark's along with Bashir. Quark is elated and begins to collect his winnings, but Fallow explains that all his players were lost, but the crew were never in any real danger. It's only a game.
It's only a game.
As Sisko is about to angrily confront Fallow over what they have experienced, Odo tells him that he would do better to talk with Quark about his attempt at cheating their guests. The Waddy quietly depart. So yes, it's an unusually non-station based episode. There's quite a bit in Quark's bar, but otherwise it all takes place in this fantasy labyrinth.
It does. It's very unusual for that, but I think it's following established Star Trek tropes of transporting the crew to an unusual environment. For once, not via the holodeck. It's more akin, I think, to one of Q's games, taking them to, the Forest of Sherwood or something like that. So I think it follows in the footsteps of certain TNG episodes like that. And I think wider as well is that concept of putting them in an unusual game that looks fun on the surface but is actually deadly underneath. That was my kind of impression. It strikes me more as one of those TNG-style episodes. And I know, Kat, you've watched a lot of TNG, so curious about your initial impressions, how it stacks up like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think compared with other episodes this early on, it's got
Mm.
relatively little in terms of character development. A lot of the
Mm.
DS9 episodes have been very heavy on characters interacting, exchanging information, and us learning about what they are like as people as a result. This one, I
Yeah.
think, kind of reinforces what they're like. The players in the game all respond in ways we might expect them to, but it's really showcasing the strangeness of the situation and the newcomers, the Wadi from the Gamma Quadrant. I yeah, I think that a lot of development went into this episode. There were a lot of sets. I think that the game
Yeah.
sets were probably used only for the game Chula, and were probably I don't think they've been repurposed anywhere else. They're very much of themselves. They've got a particular kind of door that opens. They've got particular markings on the world. I think they were probably dismantled after this episode. So I think it was probably a very expensive episode to make, and sadly, from what I gather, it isn't a fan favourite. It's one that a lot of people disdain, and I get the impression it's a bit too silly for a lot of the fans who like the more serious elements of the show.
I think that is very true. It does have a widely renowned reputation for, yeah, being far too wacky. But I would counter that I think it's wacky, but only in terms of Deep Space Nine. Now, obviously, the context is that Kat has seen no further into Deep Space Nine, so no kind of context for what's going to come, except that you sort of gather, I think, through the memes and everything, that it's going to get a bit grimmer and a bit darker. So I think that if this was a TNG episode, or a original series episode, or a Voyager, or a Lower Decks, or a Strange New Worlds, it possibly would just be seen as pretty par of the course wacky. I think the issue is that it's wacky in Deep Space Nine, which everybody kind of touts for its more serious adult plotline. So I think it's suffering a bit from that association with its more grown-up siblings. I think.
Yeah, probably so, because I think there's been room around the edges for bits of fun and making fun of the characters, but it's usually been in the setting of Odo getting at Quark and threatening to arrest him, Bashir trying to get it on with various
Oh
people.
my god! Yes.
So it's only very character based. So to have an external force come in and funny things, and so soon after the Q episode, actually.
Yes.
It's not been that long since we had a character come from the outside and mess things up for the main characters. So it's perhaps oddly, I don't know. I think to me it feels oddly placed given what's come before it. But it might be that they were getting it out of the way so that it wouldn't later interrupt a more serious flow of story.
It's a really interesting theory. I think you may be onto something there, actually. Yeah. Again, that feels like how TNG would run. We have a serious episode, wacky episode, serious episode, wacky episode. I mean, in general, it sounds like how you would make a TV show with lots of separate episodes and serials. You would break them up so that you don't just have a run of sad stories. And it's interesting if excuse me, it'll be interesting to find out what your impression is of DS9, because I feel it's then, as the show develops, it will tend towards a run of quite serious stories. That's my impression. My vague recollection is that it would just be, after a while, just serious story after serious story, not too many wacky ones to break it up. So this may be them trending a bit towards TNG and then starting to find their feet and going, you know what? The wacky stories have their place, but not here. But, we shall see how that goes. I think in the meantime, those are our initial impressions. So why don't we take it from the top, which I believe is it Cisco and Jake in his quarters?
It is, yes.
I love scenes with Ben and Jake being a normal family. It's just it puts a bed of believability under a kind of wacky space hijinks that I just really enjoy, and I think both of these characters are great and both of these actors are superb. Jake Sisko, Sirach Lofton, the actor, can convey so much of a 15-year-old, 14-year-old boy in a simple eye roll that I just think is perfect. I love this scene.
But I think Jake Sisko is particularly well written. He does feel like a young man finding his way in the world,
Yes.
feeling a bit his dad's a bit cringe to him,
I,
which is just what most teenagers are. But he can also think quite seriously about the situations that he's in. And when he
yeah,
talks with other members of the crew, he can do so serious that he isn't a petulant child.
yes,
He seems like a very charming young man at this point. Although I don't know how he'll develop later in the series, whether he becomes more or less likable. But at this point, yeah, he's got a really nice relationship with Cisco.
yeah,
And the conversation they have is about... Oh yeah, Cisco says that he must have lost weight since he last wore his dress uniform.
yes.
Because it's been 3 years and it's a bit baggy now. And Jake says, "Oh, baggy's the fashion on Bajor." So Cisco asks him why he's so interested in the fashions of Bajor, and Jake admits that a lot of Bajoran girls are coming to the station with their families, which is really cute. It's sweet that he admits that he's taken an interest in that. And the conversation then turns to where he's learned everything he knows about girls.
Oh God, yeah.
He's spending too much time with that Ferengi boy.
And it's so believable, you know. They may be 400 years in the future on a space station orbiting an alien world, but it's still, my son is discovering girls, and I don't like his ne'er-do-well friends, and it's perfectly spliced, you know, outspace nonsense and real world, I guess, yeah, sitcom, you know, situational drama storyline.
Yeah,
and it's,
I think in that it does sit very well in the 90s when that kind of
yeah,
storyline and drama
100%.
was very popular on television.
100%.
I think as the decades go on, that kind of conversation might start to look more unusual as maybe the culture changes and the kind of emotional maturity we expect of young people changes. But yeah, I think it's perhaps a little of its time, but for the time being, it sits as reading true, I think.
I definitely think so. And
there was one other thing in this scene which I thought was very
Yeah.
90s, but I don't think was actually a direct reference. There was a bit where Cisco is trying to talk to him about, he's telling Jake about the day that he's about to have making first contact with the Wadi.
yes,
And he draws a comparison
yes,
between the
I was
two
going to make the
frames.
same reference.
First contact is sort of like a first date with a girl. You have to show a certain respect for, and I just expected to, it just sounded so much like first contact is like making love to a beautiful woman.
Oh no, Space Tony.
Which is not what they were aiming for. I'm pretty sure that the fast show came later.
It very much did. It very much did. And thank you for putting that wonderful image in all of our minds of Space Tony. Let me tell you, Jake, making first contact with an alien species is a lot like making love to a beautiful trill. No. Airlock, out the airlock.
Cisco is cut off before he can finish the,
Thankfully.
The analogy.
Thankfully. And I think there's another Jake eye roll as well, which, as you say, is perfectly, timelessly cringe, as it even is today. But yes, nobody wants their parents to make a comparison like that. You know, don't bring your work and compare it to me meeting patrolman girls. What the hell are you talking
But at the
about?
same time, bless Cisco for trying. He's not foisting
100%.
work off onto someone else. He isn't
100%.
asking Keiko, the teacher, to have that conversation.
He's
there
responsible.
with his son, having their first conversation of the day. And yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, absolutely love it. But yes, Jake is rescued by a hail, which takes Cisco down to the airlock, where we have this inexplicably... I don't know if it's meant to be comic or if it's meant to be just Bashir being Bashir, but Bashir has not got his dress uniform. And there's this whole scene with him just being like, oh no, all of a fluster because he hasn't packed it and he's sure he packed it. And
They're alien. They won't know our customs. It won't really matter, will it? Yeah, it's peculiar. I think it is meant to read as comedic. He is flustered and not doing as he's meant to do. He's not the consummate professional. He's a slightly jumbled up young man.
Okay.
And I like that when Cisco arrives, the first thing he says is, "Doctor, where's your uniform?"
Because we now realise that he's a consummate professional. Ben Cisco is a brilliant commander, and he's been saddled with this dithering idiot of a doctor. And again, it feels like
He caters on every deck. I don't think we've had it explained whether the uniforms that they wear are laundered anywhere, because you never see that happening. You don't see any hint of where the uniforms go after they've worn them. You don't see the uniforms come back to them. If someone gains rank, you might see them being passed their new uniform. But I have to assume that they chuck them into the replicators, that they're dismantled and then recreated at the start of each day. So why couldn't he just ask for a new dress uniform in his size?
100%. So I forgot to add it to my notes because I'm not a very well-organised person, but having read the background production notes, there was meant to be a couple of lines about getting Bashir to commission a new uniform from Who else? Garak! Yes!
Yeah, but the
And
indoor cats just mentioned, don't they have a Garak? They
precisely.
do.
Oh, I've not got the chat open. So, yes.
Oh, if he's not even dressing Bashir, his boyfriend, what is he doing?
It's not yet been established, Cat. So let's not go down that path yet. But the indoor cat, hello, chat, is absolutely right. There is a tailor on the station, which kind of throws that theory about where do they get their clothes from a bit for a loop. Because if they have a tailor, do they buy new clothes from somebody who puts them together in the old-fashioned way? It's not explained.
Where do his fabrics come from? Does he have them sent from Cardassia and then makes them? Does he have them replicated? What? Yeah.
I
Trade
wonder.
routes and
Yeah.
practicality.
I think it's one of these core Star Trek concepts, which is, yes, we could replicate it, which means if we make it old-fashioned from raw materials with our hands and tools, that gives it an extra kind of value. And it's never massively explored, but Star Trek always loves to show people in the future doing these kind of old-fashioned things, such as cooking, making clothes, gardening, lots of things that normally a replicator could do for you. So the option is there, and I think, as I say, they were going to put it in the script, and Dax says back to Bashir, well, I don't think it's ideal for a Cardassian to make a Starfleet uniform, which seems a bit kind of unnecessary, and it's possibly why they cut it originally and it wasn't filmed. So, but you put your finger on a very glaring plot point, which just makes this whole comic scene bump a little bit harder for me. Like, this just doesn't make sense. Why
I
you're
wonder
doing
whether
this.
it initially centered around that line about Garak.
wonder
It
if
was
it
in
did.
there to remind us of a character that exists that we haven't seen for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe when they decided not to write him back in during this series, they just thought, we don't need to mention him here. It's not relevant. And as you say, the character immediately rebuffs it anyway. It wouldn't be appropriate for Garak to make his dress uniform as much as Julian would like him to.
100%.
I'm
Once
really
again,
invested in that relationship. God damn it! I need season 2 to roll round.
to remind you all, Kat's only seen one episode with Garak, and already they are absolutely fixated. So they've come like leaps and bounds past what Tumblr has achieved with the whole Garashia kind of relationship. Oh, can't wait for you to see it, but no, we're
So many episodes in the way. So we should probably get on with this one. Actually,
let's get on with this one. Crack on. So the party are there. The door rolls back, and the Wadi emerge. They're humanoid, but they have paint on their heads, and some of them are very tall. I noticed.
They are. I
some of the men
think. I can't remember whether we saw any shots of their feet, but I suspect that they're wearing platforms.
That would make sense. Yeah, I would think
Which
so.
you're right. They do all loom rather.
They really are. They really are, and their leader is Master Searcher Fallow. And
I've made a note that I like that
please.
Kira and Dax are looking very dashing and solemn in the shot, and Bashir looks like the awkward little twink that he is.
Ah! Oh, dear me. Chief Medical Officer, awkward twink. Pleased to meet you. You know, did you get business cards with that on? That is brilliant. But he absolutely is, as always, the Gormless standout. I also like that Cisco introduces his senior staff. You know, my patrol liaison officer, Major Kira, my chief medical officer, my chief scientific officer. And I got a massive Laszlo vibe from Fallow when he goes, yes, yes, yes. Where are the games? And it just immediately made me think, like, is this guy like kind of Laszlo in space?
That's strong Matt Berry energy.
That's what I thought. You know, the beard, the awkwardness, the flamboyance.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I do love that Cisco presents that the very formal meeting this new species. It's incredibly important. Formality, formality. Then, yes, but where are the games?
Yes.
This goes straight down to anti-business.
Yes, I do love that they pull the rug out, and you know, it's the complete opposite of what everyone expects from Star Trek. You know, can you imagine Jean-Luc Picard confronted with that? You know, the elder statesman, the great diplomat of Starfleet, the captain of the Federation flagship, and he has to confront these people who just want to play backgammon. I mean,
he would have coped terribly with it, but Riker would have been right in there. He would have been
yeah,
fine.
you're absolutely right.
Charm and immediately show them down to probably a holodeck on the Enterprise.
God, yeah. I hope it's just a poker game and nothing more. You know, the Riker 69 special, computer run program 69.
But yes, I really like the Wadi. I like the fact that we've got hedonistic aliens for a change. Because we've had a not dissimilar kind of set up in a previous DS9 episode with the aliens that were engaging in a hunt.
Oh, yes, the Tusk, yes.
Yeah, well remembered. And they turned up and they pretty much just disregarded the Federation. They didn't care about Cisco or Bayshore or anyone they met. They just wanted to pursue their own ends. The Wadi are fairly similar, but they're willing to greet a new species as long as they get taken straight to the games room.
Yeah, absolutely. And then somebody leans forward and says, Quarks, take us to Quarks, which has probably never, ever been said in Starfleet Federation history. Take me to the bar. I mean that's diplomacy 101. Get everyone drunk, I guess, and we'll work it out from there. But just a brilliant intro. I do enjoy the intro.
Oh, and then Cisco rounds off the scene by saying, "First contact is not what it used to be."
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I love that. It does surprise me actually as well. It just popped into my head there. But you'd think this is now the most exciting frontier in the Federation. And you'd think that Cisco would have like a permanent diplomatic staff, like trained Federation ambassadors, ready to meet anybody from the other side of the galaxy. And it's not. It is just.
That's a very good point. You might expect to have even ambassadors from a few different of the. Which quadrant are we in? Alpha quadrant? You might expect to have some representatives of the different interests within Alpha Quadrant. Even if you look at it in that more capitalistic way, they will be interested in trade routes and in establishing contact.
Of course.
And a lot of DS9 is minded that way. But yeah, they're not set up to do that on DS9, which is interesting. Which again is a big difference with Babylon 5, which is set up with the ambassadors who are stationed aboard at 5.
Now, if I can just go slightly further with that segue, everyone else on B5 was an ambassador. They were all ambassadors except for Sinclair and the other guy. I've forgotten his name. Sheridan, who were both Earth Force officers. They were technically military officers, so there was not an Earth ambassador on Babylon 5. Which
that's a very good point.
Always thought was a bit strange. And I think it comes from the same place, which is the senior staff of B5 and DS9 are our focus. A diplomat from Earth for either of them would take some of the focus away. So I think it's simply
That's a good point. I think the captain ends up acting as diplomat in every situation without himself being an ambassador. Yeah, you're right. Good point.
It's just a weird thing because I think Starfleet officers and the commander of B5 can be an ambassador, absolutely should be, but you get the feeling it's not their primary job, and it ain't. They've also got to run the station and deal with ships and look after the crew. You'd think there'd be a permanent diplomat, but there isn't. And it's just a weird thing that I've noticed with both shows.
You're right, it is very. I guess it's just another set of shoes that Cisco has to fill in this situation. But yeah, not having a team around him and instead counting on the angry Kira. Actually, Dax is probably the best suited to do the job because Bashir is just clueless.
Yeah, he is.
Which makes him a delight to have there, but I wouldn't trust him to do that.
Oh my God, he's the last person I'd bring to First Contact. As this episode,
he's a fantastic xenozoologist. I would trust him implicitly. If someone were in danger, if someone were injured, I'd bring him straight in because they're probably unconscious and he's not going to say anything improper. 100%. But as soon as it comes to having conversations, no, take that man out of the room.
You see, this is why Kat would be an excellent diplomat for the Federation. Well volunteered. But we do have an ambassador because we get to Quarks, who introduces himself an ambassador of goodwill, which I thought was wonderful.
And there's some nice little exchange between Cisco and Quark where the first thing Quark asks is, he asks Dax if the Wadi have any money on them, which is an interesting problem because obviously you want to welcome them warmly, but these are gambling tables. The way that you play is by placing a wager. And obviously Quark's first intuition is to follow the profit incentive and try and get their money from them. And Cisco says, "Damn it, Quark, this is a new life form from the Gamma Quadrant. I expect you to treat them with respect." Quark interrupts and saying, "Commander, I'm a host. A host is an ambassador of goodwill. The more goodwill I can generate, the longer they'll stay, the greater my profits." I think we're talking the same language here. Cisco says, "Not quite." But Quark then he does take over and starts communicating with the Wadi and asking them, do they do a lot of gambling where they're from? Fellow says, "We like games, Quark. Doesn't everybody?" So he suggests an investment opportunity in Dabo and then introduces them to the game. And at this point, again, Follow asks what the rules are of Dabo, and Quark just says, you'll figure it out as you go. There are no rules for Dabo.
Yes.
They just aren't. I think we bumped into this before. I've asked whether there's a way that Dabo works, whether it is just Earth roulette with slightly shuffled rules, and apparently there's just no convention for it, despite it being played in almost every episode.
Yeah, it is just background noise, I think, essentially, to have people be seen to be gambling without getting too stuck in it. I think in the same way that like the original series introduced us to three-dimensional chess, very cool, looks amazing. Nobody ever explains how the pieces actually move between the boards. You're just meant to look at it and go, wow, space games.
Dabo!
Exactly, and everybody goes Dabo, and nobody's entirely sure why or how.
Skimpy outfits. And,
yeah. That's a little bit more troubling. I'm just going to thank Izzy there for clarifying exactly what was going on Babylon 5. Because it has been even longer since I've seen that, and that's why Sinclair was the ambassador.
Yes, there used to be an Earth ambassador. The Minbari refused to accept it because they wanted Sinclair for their own purposes, which miraculously worked out, even though the actor left after one series.
Yes, yeah. And some fantastic work by Straczynski there, pulling it back together.
What a guy. But we're on Deep Space Nine.
But we are on Deep Space Nine. And
which has no relation to Bab 5.
No, none whatsoever.
Quark offers the Waddy one play of Dabo on the house, after which he asks, what would you care to wager? So at that point, they show him a small box, and Quark says, there's an old Ferengi expression, good things come in small packages. And I went to look this up because although it's an old idiom, an old Earth English idiom, I thought it sounds like the kind of thing that De Beers or Tiffany's might have popularized in the 20s, say. It sounds like the kind of thing that a jeweler would use to sell their wares, but apparently not. It's just an old saying that no one really knows where it comes from, which is a little frustrating.
Yeah, that is. And I also bumped on it, but Star Trek's done this kind of thing before. I think it's one of the movies where Spock, and I'm not going to spoil it because I know Kat is also working their way through the movies, and we are not doing a movie podcast either, but I would love to. But there is a point at which Spock quotes an Earth saying and says there was an old Vulcan saying, and it's like, I don't know why the writers like doing that, but they do. They love being, haha, you thought it was an Earth saying.
It's showing the similarity between our cultures.
Yes. That seems very weird, though, and I've never quite understood why.
I prefer it when they come up with their own idioms for the different cultures. Too. Revenge being a dish best served cold.
Fantastic.
Genius.
It's absolutely brilliant.
And it's so usable.
Perfectly usable. Used all of the time. So, and they will. Believe you me, they will make up for it with Ferengi culture in particular. Has so many wise words of wisdom that we will learn about as the show goes on. But we are stealing ahead of ourselves.
Yes, the box contains Clonpeags, which I paid interest to because they're little irregular ships. They're about that long. They're little sticks.
Yeah.
There are several Waddy delegates, I guess, who've come through the wormhole, who stand around the gaming tables during the episode, and they're all holding Clonpeags, and they pack them together occasionally, and they talk to each other and demonstrate with them, and they look like large twiglets. And when Fellow is trying to explain to Quark the value of them, he says they have many different uses, which is really suggestive. Wow. Nobody shows what these uses are, but I love that line's included. But Quark is unmoved and says, sorry, I'm okay for sticks at the moment.
I do love that, yeah. And I think the only use we see of the sticks is them hitting them together in a kind of cheering, applauding way.
I think when tension is building, when Quark is about to make a roll, it's like clap, 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 clap at a rising tempo.
Yes. So that's one use, and then presumably they couldn't show us anymore.
But whenever there is, again, like quite a few other episodes, the direction is quite ambitious. There's constant circling cameras moving around the game tables, moving around the bar, and there are always Waddy standing in a semicircle to be shot behind the gaming table in question. And they're always holding their Clonpeags and gesturing with them and pointing them at each other. I think it gave all the background actors just something nice to do. I just like it. I really like that they were named. They're pointless little sticks. We don't really understand what they're for, but they all have them, and they really love them.
They really love them. You're absolutely right. It is an attempt, I think, to give us depth to a culture that we're going to see for about 40 minutes, if we're lucky.
Yes, I don't assume that we're ever going to see them again. But
No.
the next wager that they offer is alpha current nectar, which is priceless where they come from. Quark takes a sip of it and then says, "One man's priceless is another man's worthless," which is a lovely expression.
And I think, is that the point at which Cisco says, "Quark, accept the
Take the
juice," which has got to be, the weirdest order he's ever given. But
Yeah, and I love that he's diminishing it by calling it juice.
I know
Yeah.
it's a perfect extra little line. Very
But
good.
Quark insists that he won't take it, so Fallow produces some crystals out of a bag, which really reminded me of, do you remember when you used to go to museum gift shops, if you were that kind of a kid when you were little, and they had the little box of gems and you had a little bag that you could put them into? It reminded me of those. They're just lots of little pebbles in different colours and they're just so compelling. And I think Quark feels about those crystals exactly the way I felt about those little museum gift bags.
Which actually, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that actually made me go, wait, hang on. We all have that shared impulse to go, oh, the little magical stones, just get them, put them in the box, shiny. We are all magpies at heart, and I think that is a universal humanoid thing. So I was a bit surprised that Fallow would be like...
And a magpie thing.
Yes, and a magpie thing, yes. So it surprised me that Fallow would be so dismissive of, well, I've got some shiny rocks, and I'm like, my friend, surely shiny rocks are what bind us all together. Do we not all love a shiny rock? Do we not all find
just like their games and their giant twiglets, they're different from us too.
Well, that is the most alien thing I've ever seen, because if you introduce me to a species who don't get the joy of finding a cool rock at the beach and bringing it home, then I was flabbergasted. I was so flabbergasted that he would not think that they were so cool. So, truly alien.
No, good observation.
It just made me surprised because, yes, we all have that universal compulsion to go, there's shiny rocks, put them in the bag, play with the shiny rocks.
Oh, and then Cisco brings up a name which I wrote down, Captain McCulloch.
Yes.
Who wrote the first revised first contact procedures for Starfleet.
Yes.
Cisco is slightly drunk at this point because the Waddy are playing Dabo in the background. He's sitting there getting pissed because he thought he was going to have a really important diplomatic mission and he's just disappeared onto a gaming table. I'm slightly drunk. He says that he wishes McCulloch were here now instead of him.
I think that is such a believable moment as well, because I love that it actually shows that behind the vaunted ideals of Starfleet, the Federation, strange new worlds, weird cultures, occasionally you're going to bump into a culture that just make no sense, and all of your Starfleet directives are useless. And you might as well just go to the bar and get drunk because there's nothing you can do. And I love it. It's such a believable, realistic moment. That, it
is such a deflation for him that he thought he had this big task to do, and he's no longer relevant in this scene.
He's not.
It's the Ferengi's job now.
Oh God, and that must give him the fear as well. I can't think of anything worse. We all love our friendly bartender troll, but a diplomat he is not. A Federation citizen he is not. He's
not someone you'd want to introduce your friends to. Never mind the people from a different galaxy that you really want to keep safe and build good reputation.
Exactly.
Cisco decides he's going to go to bed, and he asks Quark to call him back if the Waddy ever get tired of playing Dabo, at which point the Waddy enthusiastically yell, "Dabo!" And they're all holding big handfuls of gold-pressed latinum.
Well
Quark
remembered.
obviously asks them if they're ready to call it a night, and Fallow says they've only just got started. At which point, I'll explain this for plot reasons, Quark pleads that the Dabo girl's arm must be getting very tired from all that spinning. So Fallow instructs Quark to just replace her so they can keep playing, and Quark asks a male Ferengi called Broik to take the wheel. And the next thing we see is Broik clicking a button on the underside of the table, and the next round happens to be a losing one. So we see that the Ferengi are cheating the guests, as they are wont to do.
As they are, unfortunately, yes.
Terrible Ferengi representation, guys. Do better for yourselves.
Terrible, perhaps accurate, most definitely, I'm afraid. This unfortunately does set a precedent that is followed pretty routinely.
And Izzy in the chat has helpfully shared the rules of acquisition with us.
Thank you, Izzy. That is
in
wonderful.
relation to the shiny rocks, but I think this is probably another good example of it. They're going to cheat where they can because it's in their law.
100%. It is more than law. It is a cultural observation. It's this bizarre conflation of the rules they follow and the culture they observe. The rules of acquisition are not just their laws, but they're the basis of their very society.
Everything.
It's everything, which makes it kind of difficult when you're in the Federation, who've sworn not to interfere in other cultures, to kind of deal with the fact that somebody is culturally obliged to try and cheat you. And you're like, oh no, I don't really know what to do here.
Yeah, it's like if you met a culture who were obliged to murder everyone that they met, you'd be like, well, we can't tell you to change, but we might have to tell you to change.
Yeah, quite the moral conundrum, and also kind of getting shot in the face a bit. Thankfully, none of that is happening at Quark's bar. Does anything else happen before the Wadi catch Broik pushing his
Sisko
button?
goes back to his quarters, and Jake is there doing some homework. Sisko says,
something.
Talk more about girls when you get up.
Yes, that's right.
And yeah, and Jake asks how meeting the Wadi went, and Sisko replies, great, just great. I've done nothing for the last 6 hours but eat Ferengi low-carb beans and watch people play childish games.
I love that he gets annoyed with it. Again, it makes him believable. You know, he's clearly that Sisko, you know, loves his job, wants to be an ambassador, and he's just been absolutely had the rug pulled out from under him. And it's just, and he's frustrated and he snaps a bit at Jake, which I think, you know, anybody would do when they're frustrated and a little bit tiddly and full of loca beans, you know. We've all been there. We've all...
The last thing he does before he goes to sleep is he kisses Jake on the forehead, which is really sweet. They're so nice with each other.
Really
they're very huggy, and he's not afraid to kiss his son on the forehead, and Jake doesn't recoil from that. Yeah, it's a nice relationship they have, and it's nice to see.
Especially, I think, in the 90s when they were starting to build towards this antagonistic family unit, which I think has kind of become the norm.
Yeah, definitely.
Call me an old
it's a nice point of conflict in any series when you've got that intergenerational difference, you've got the cultural difference that comes with that. But yeah, they don't go for that so strongly here. They do emphasize that Jake is growing into his own person and encountering the cultures in a different way than Sisko does. But they're still really close at this point, at least.
Yes, they are. Yes, and it is wonderful. And I do like that. I love any touching moment between Jake and Ben. It's so believable. I like that.
It is. The actors are brilliant. And the very next shot is Fallow lifting Broik's hand, which Broik has been using to press the button.
Oh, no. Busted.
And Quark tries to blame Broik. Broik, you disreputable swindler. I've put up with your cheating for the last time. God damn it, Quark.
Yeah, he'll throw anyone under the bus. He's not a moral man, unfortunately. But he's very good Ferengi.
This next bit I thought was really interesting. Follow approaches Quark and instructs him to sit down. Quark asks if they can call it even and offers them another spin on the house or a free visit to the holosuite. And he then asks, do you know what a holosuite is? Do they have sex on your world? That's what holosuites are for. In as many words. It's not all conjecture and implication and having to clean it up afterwards. They are for sex. The holosuites are for sex. Just like the internet.
I'm so glad. It's possibly the one redeeming point of this episode is to put down in no uncertain words, decades before Lower Decks, basically came along and said that's what holosuites for. Holosuites are for fucking. That is what they are for. You know, and I'm
pretty sure that Barclay was using them for that in TNG, but it's never stated overtly.
They danced around it. No, TNG, prim and proper. It was Strange Fantasies, where the senior staff were all like Greek goddesses. Yeah, and it was like, okay, this is one man's kink, and we're not going to say that. We're not going to say kink or fancy or fucking or anything like that.
It's got problems.
This ain't your daddy's Star Trek. This is DS9. You go to the special magic room of illusions where you fuck. And wow.
Oh, I love that they finally said it. There's something of maturity in that, and something of, this is where we're at now, 9 episodes in. But yeah, the Wadi apparently are not interested. We don't know whether this is because they are asexual as a culture, because they have enough sex with each other and their clon peaks, or whether it's just that they're more interested in gaming at this point. But they start walking away. And Fallow then suggests that Quark has the opportunity to win more gemstones in a new game, an honest game. And another Wadi walks on holding a little box about yay big. Fallow opens it, and in the next shot, this table has leapt into being. I think we have an image of that.
Let me cut to that right now.
Yeah, the Chula table.
The Chula table, there we go. We apologise for the slightly fuzzy quality of this screenshot. It has come
It's the
from
nature.
the internet and
And DS9 was shot on film and hasn't
precisely.
been. They couldn't upgrade it in any way from
Could
what already
not.
exists of VHS quality. It's all we have.
I'm afraid so. But yes, me and Kat both thought this would be a great shot show because it is a very ambitious prop. It takes up a lot of room. I think it completely replaces the Darbo table, looking at this.
I think it must do because it takes up a lot of space in the room, and it looks as if they're staying in the same space. So it must sit, either over or where the Dabo table used to be. And yeah, I've described it in my script notes. It's a large board game with multiple triangles stacked horizontal above one another, with a path leading from one to the next, like a spiral staircase. And Quark looks intrigued and delighted. He asks what the game is called. It's called Chula.
Chula.
When Quark asks about the rules, Fallow ignores him. These are your players. We'll start at the second shap. And Quark asks if they can start the game at the beginning, and the Waddy all laugh. Fallow says only children enter at the first shap. So yeah, this is like me at any board game meet. I don't understand how any of them work. It takes a long time for me to get my brain around them, and it's just a series of words. You're starting at the second shap because that's how it's done. Go.
I do think that is 3 decades on, it is such a universal experience. I think anybody who's ever tried to get into a new board game these days has.
Or if you're joining a family game night and they've got their own rules for how the game is played.
Oh no! Boggling.
They've come here from the Gamma Quadrant. They've got this game with its rules. They're not going to tell you how it works properly, but they'll laugh at you if you ask.
Oh no! I think, once again, Star Trek has proven itself timeless in that it can always recreate a scene we are all familiar with, which is trying to play a board game with people and their own rules. There's nothing more disconcerting. I will note there in the chat, the Indoor Cat points out that, obviously, Quark did not explain how to play Darbo, so there is a natural balance.
True. Yeah, that's fair.
I'm also going to thank David, who's dropped in and mentioned Rom with a mop and bucket. What an awful holosuite task that must be. And it does pop up in lower decks as well. Changing the biofilters on the holodecks is an unpleasant task, as we all know. So just returning to that whole exploration of what holodecks are for. But we're getting away from Chula, the wonderful board game the Wadi have brought.
So they're about to commence the game. We cut away to Cisco's quarters where he's asleep, and he starts to roll over in bed. And in the very next shot, he continues the rolling movement, but he's now lying on the ground in his uniform rather than in pajamas, and he's in an unknown place. Wakes up suddenly and looks around, and the floor is a grid of triangles. He's on his own. So he tries calling to ops, to security. He tells the computer to freeze the program, because he knows that if you're in a weird environment, it's almost certainly a holodeck program.
I love it.
Happens.
Cisco is Star Trek savvy. He's like, I've woken up somewhere, I don't know where I am. Am I on a holodeck? Because that happens like every other week on the Enterprise. Those guys are always getting stuck in the holodeck. Maybe I'm stuck in a holodeck. I love that. I love that he was Star Trek savvy. He knows the rules of his own fictional universe and what drives the narrative.
And the writers know the audience, even though there isn't any other implication that they might be on a holodeck. The audience will spend the whole freaking episode going, they're in the holodeck, aren't they? Unless you rule it out early on.
Yeah.
So they do. And happily, he's been given a tricorder, so he gets that out and starts tapping around at it. Nothing happens. So he moves from one door to another in this strange room that he's in. He slaps the button next to a door. It doesn't work. Slaps the next one. I think he goes to a third one, and that one finally opens.
Yes.
Onto a room with even more doors.
It's an episode of Scooby-Doo.
And to show that they're alien, the doors slide up and down. Which is probably a nice technical problem for the crew to solve.
I think so. I must say I do actually like the set. I do think it's quite detailed. It's quite unusual.
It is.
I enjoyed
presumably it's been created just for this one much hated episode.
100% it was.
Oh, damn it. So much resource went into making this thing that all of you hate.
I do think they spent a lot of money on this episode as well. That was somewhere in the production notes was like, yeah, we spent a lot of money on the sets. And I think there's a bit of resentment amongst the production team, which is like, I can't believe we made this episode and everybody bloody hates it. So
I don't hate it. I think it's actually really good fun. And we're going to find out why. Anyway, Sisko keeps trying doors. He eventually moves along a corridor. He opens another door. It opens, and behind it, there's Fallow laughing at him. Sisko says, "You." Fallow says, "Shap 2, move along home."
There it is. There it
And
is.
then
He
Sisko
said the
starts asking
line.
him where he is and what's happening, and Fallow just replies, "Move along home," and then laughs as the door slides shut again. He's such a troll. It's great.
At that point, I started going away from the, oh, these guys are funny too. These guys are starting to piss me off.
Again, maybe part of why I like this episode so much is that I am a big Q stan. I really like the combination of whimsy and
mischief,
incredible
and
power,
menace.
Yeah, menace is a good word for it. I was going to go with hidden evil. But yeah, that's just it. It looks as though Fallow is similarly very powerful, very mysterious, and we've got no idea what his intentions are, other than to mess people around, clearly. So yes, I do enjoy every time he pops up within the game. But he refuses to answer any of Sisko's questions. He just laughs at him. The door closes. And then Sisko hears Bashir crying out. And Sisko tries to gauge where the cries are coming from, and he runs along the corridor, rounds a corner, and he finds Bashir standing up, apparently still asleep, and just screaming.
Let me show you an artist's representation of that right now. There we go.
Oh, Bashir.
It's another wonderful moment for poor Siddigel Feddle, who I think would like to be taken seriously as an actor, and unfortunately, the writers have decided that Bashir is just going to be this absolute chaos, just utterly disorganized man-child, and yeah, they have him leaning against this wall, just screaming, just screaming.
He throws himself into it. He screams with aplomb.
Yes, 100%, 100%. And then Sisko wakes him up, and he has one big scream, which I kind of identify with, because if I thought I was having a nightmare, then woke up and my boss was standing over me and I was in some weird place I'd never been before, my God, I'd scream too. My God, I would scream. I would be very, very disconcerted. So I have some sympathy with the guy. I will say that.
And what Bashir says when he wakes up is, "Oh, thank God, I thought I was having a nightmare. I couldn't wake up." And then I've got a whole paragraph about why does he mention God? Where does Earth religion sit in the freaking start? Which I should probably have asked you before the episode, so you could actually go away and research it. But sod that, we're thinking on our feet now.
Okay.
But it's very rare that a Star Trek character says, "My God, thank God, oh God," because that gives it implies a context in which a God is believed in by the character who is speaking. And even though in our culture and in 90s culture, it was largely an artifact of the UK and America being Christian cultures, increasingly mixed and atheistic as time goes on, increasingly secular. So it doesn't sound strange in our culture for someone who isn't overtly religious to say, "Oh, thank God." But it sounds really weird to me to hear Bashir say it. Just because again, I'm going to mention Babylon 5. There's a Babylon 5 episode where each of the different ambassadors from the cultures do a little introduction of their religion. They do a scenario, a ritual to show the room. And the one that, it's a really moving one for me. I like it a lot. Sheridan, the captain, comes up with, he brings aboard a representative of every single Earth religion that is known at that time. And he introduces every one of them to the room saying, "This is so-and-so, a vicar from this kind of Christianity. This is so-and-so, a Muslim from..." And the camera pans across and the line doesn't end. It's just an endless streaming out of people from every culture and every religion. And it's absolutely beautiful. But Star Trek doesn't engage with that much. They talk a bit about the cultures and the religions of alien races. But I don't think that in the Trek I've watched so far, there's been any reference to Christianity, Judaism, Sikhism, Islam. I think they probably avoided the kind of disputes that might come up among fans, among characters. But yeah, I got all of that just from Bashir shouting, "Oh, thank God," when he wakes up, because who is he thanking?
Right? No, I think you put your finger on something very, very critical, not just to DS9, but to Star Trek. And I'm going to rack my memory and say, and Jack can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of this is a hangover from Gene Roddenberry, who believed in his Star Trek vision that we would have gone beyond religion as a
Ah.
driving force in human society. And I think in the Star Trek universe, it regressed to become something more of a kind of cultural peccadillo. You know, it was still out there, but it wasn't seen as the quite dominant force it is in kind of 20th century contemporary society. That's my recollection. And I think, from a writer's point of view, yes, it's easier to just not engage with the complex religious interplay of, 20th century theological politics because that's difficult.
And to make any kind of guess as to where they will have progressed to by that point is to take a risk. To say that they'll still be the same doesn't feel like progress. To say that they've changed is to dismiss or deny some people's religions. And
Exactly.
I think Straczynski and Bab 5 got around it just by saying all of these religions still exist.
Still
They're
here.
still important to the individuals who follow them. There's a Jewish crew member who has a Jewish style funeral at one point. A Jewish funeral. And it's, he weaves it into the world, just assuming that not much has changed. But as you say, Star Trek just evades the question until they accidentally put a god into the script.
100%, 100%.
And then some asshole years later who claims to like the episode picks up on it.
No, I think it's a very reasonable thing to observe. I don't know if it was in the script or if it's part of Siddig El-Fadl being basically a British Indian man. And it just being part of his natural language, because he's done it other times in the show, I am sure. He's objected.
So I think from somewhere it might have been Izzy or Indoor Cat who said that they were very strict about what was spoken on set during filming. That generally speaking, if someone tried to reword a line, someone, probably Berman, would stop shooting and insist that they go back and say the line as written.
Oh, wow, okay.
So yeah, it seems unusual that something like that would slip through unnoticed.
That's really interesting. Then I would be curious to dig into that further. I don't think it's come up in any of the production notes, so I couldn't tell you any more about it. All I can go on is my general understanding of Star Trek, which is the fictional universe was built around the idea that capitalism, scarcity, religion, different nation-state government, all of that kind of vanished by the time of the Federation. But in an interesting way, DS9 will actually have to come back on this, because we already have started to understand that the Bajoran religion is built around the prophets.
Which definitely exist.
Gods. Which definitely exist as alien beings. So actually DS9 is setting itself up for a massive religious struggle as it tries to deal with what Starfleet considers extra-dimensional aliens and what the Bajorans consider gods. And there is nobody is right or wrong in that, because they can be both. And then we start to have to deal with, well, how the hell do you process religion in a futuristic society where what we would consider miracles are just everyday occurrence? It gets very complicated. So
I just remembered as well the TNG episode where Picard almost dies and Q greets him.
Can you imagine? I love Tapestry.
I love that episode.
It's such a good episode. But I cannot to this day imagine how outraged Picard must have been when he woke up thinking he was dead and it's Q. I'd be furious.
But at the end of it, it's so sweet because Q has It's a Wonderful Life to him and shown him that had he not made the same mistakes
100%.
in life, then he wouldn't have been the person he was. But yeah, they're perfectly happy to posit Q may or may not be a god who can greet people after they die. It might just have been a hallucination on Jean-Luc's part because he loves Q so fucking much. We will never know, and they never meet it. They never talk about it again, and nobody talks about whether when they all die they're going to have to meet Q.
Can you imagine? Good.
Oh my god, the nightmares the crew would have. That day on.
Like you wouldn't believe. What a thing to look forward to.
But we're getting sidetracked.
We are. I'm just going to thank David in chat, who's also reminded me that Siddig El-Fadl is Sudanese, not British Indian. I do apologise. I think he was RSC, or he has some great theatre background, which has given him that very distinctive British RP accent, which is always what's jarred in my mind, which has made me think he was British Indian. So thank you for the correction, David. Appreciated. Right, let's get back on course. Where were we?
We were at, we've met
We are,
Alexander City, who is screaming.
yes,
We're about to meet Kira and Dax, who both round a corner, I think, at the same time.
they do.
In
What's all this
response to the
noise?
screaming. Oh, I do like as well, actually, that they made it one of the male characters who's standing there screaming.
Not
It would have been a very lazy choice to have had.
Mhm.
But then for Kira and Dax, it wouldn't be in character. I can't actually imagine either of them screaming in response to threat.
That was my first impression.
Hell yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That flaky little, 100% him. But Dax and Kira both come in exactly as their character would suggest. Dax is really curious and really concerned about where it is, and it's Kira who is angry. She is angry. She does not want to be here. She does not know how she got here. And she says, you explorer types probably find all this fascinating. I'm not Starfleet. I don't. And I'm like, that's brilliant. Yeah. That is brilliant. We don't want you.
She didn't ask for any of this nonsense. Yes. She's just here to protect the interests of Bajor, and suddenly she's in this weird labyrinth.
Yep, 100%. And again, it's a little bit knowing. It's a bit about the writers, like, you know that the TNG crew would all be like, oh, wow, this kind of thing happens every other week. Yeah, we're always getting pulled into weird side dimensions. Kira's there as the outlier. She's there going, this doesn't happen every week to me. I am just, as she says, what, a Bajoran administrator? Yeah. Which is a bit far from any of the administrating temp jobs I've ever done, I've got to be honest. But I love that she is actually going, no, this is not normal. What Starfleet calls normal, the rest of the galaxy think is weird as hell. You get that, guys, right? You get that this isn't normal? I love it. I love Kira in this scene.
I also like that in that sequence, again, slightly strangely, Bashir hypothesizes that it's some sort of behavioral test. He describes them as being like rats in a maze.
Yes.
Which is a scientific reference that dates to the 19th and 20th centuries, which suggests to me that he's a medical historian as well as a clinician, because 100%. Do they really still put rats in mazes at the point at which he's studying? I don't think they do.
I would really
it feels
hope
like
not.
a very 20th century reference to have thrown in. So I think generously we can say that he's aware of his Earth history.
100%. I do think it's one of those times when they try and tie it back to reality and give us something that we would recognise, whereas both of us being veterans of TV tropes will know that usually sci-fi writers go with the rule of three, which is 2 real-world things and a 3rd fictional thing that ties back into the universe, which I love when they do that. I think
for something like this, though, they could have said like a Tribble in a maze, and at the same time set it in space.
Would have worked.
And had us imagining what the hell have they been doing with Tribbles?
Worked.
Because Tribbles would be great to experiment on, and also maybe they move beyond animal experimentation. But if you're going to put anything,
that's the hope.
Mind you, to be fair, a Tribble wouldn't bother moving along a maze; it'd just replicate itself until it was fun.
So the conclusion of this experiment is the maze is full of Tribbles. Oh no! So bad experiment. Yeah. I'm going to say hello to Riddy Crash, who has just dropped in for the very first time. Welcome to the stream. They prefer TNG. So we'll do what we can to entertain you.
Well, we have said that this episode is more TNG in style than DS9, so maybe you'll enjoy our ramblings about it. But yes, I think they all give a line that feels very much in line with their thinking. Bashir is a doctor and scientist and mentions the rats in mazes. Kira is angry and just wants to get back to being a Bajoran administrator. Sisko calmly says this isn't what he signed up for either, but he suggests they take Fallow's advice and find their way home. Dax tries to figure out whether they can contact one another using their comm badges. And they can. So she suggests they split up, which is always wise when you're in a weird situation.
Yeah, I did immediately bump on that and think that has never worked ever in Star Trek or anything.
You've never watched a horror movie either,
exactly. Guys. All I can think is that the attempt to check that the communicators work, and I think she also says to the tricorders, pick up each other. Can we track each other? They can. So I think they actually do try and establish a little bit of justification for it.
I think that's a very nice bit of DS9 protocol as well. They always give some science behind what it is that they're doing, and they follow the logic that science dictates. So yes, they've got their tricorders, they've got their comm badges, and Sisko says to perform proximity checks every 2 minutes to make sure that none of them has disappeared or not that they know it, that none of them has fallen off the board.
Yeah, that's right. Excellent recall. Thank you, Kat. Yes. And I think as they split up, I think Sisko has the last line, which is, if all else fails, just yell again, Doctor. We'll find you. Oh, the shade. Oh, the shade. I love it.
And the next scene, we've got Jake entering ops, saying, "Do you know where my dad's gone?" Because people have started to notice that they're missing now. And I quite like this conversation between Jake and Odo, that Odo doesn't dismiss Jake immediately. He talks to him as he would to anyone, just ascertaining when he last saw him. Jake explaining that school's closed and his dad hasn't turned up. They were going to have a talk before breakfast and that hasn't happened.
Yep.
Odo advises Jake to go to school, and Jake says the school's closed. And Jake admits that he and Nog were going to go to airlock 3 to watch the Bajoran passengers come aboard. And Odo says, "You mean to look at girls?" Yeah.
Again, I love the expression that passes over Jake's face as he tries and fails to kind of keep the reality from his expression. His expression is just so, yeah,
It's really
we are.
sweet. And he comes
so
across
sweet.
to me as a good kid.
Yeah,
He's,
100%.
he's a little abashed that, I'm going to go look at the
Yeah, of
Bajoran
course
girl.
I am.
But he's honest. He's not lying to Odo, the security officer, very sensibly.
100%. He does. And I think Odo, yes, takes it seriously, tells Jake to go back to his quarters, I think, and then interrogates the computer to find out that Ben Sisko has just left the station with no sign of him logging off. And he takes off straight to Ops, where we meet everyone's favourite stand-in, Lieutenant Primin, Lieutenant Primin, as we would call him, but yes, Lieutenant Primin's still in Ops. And how does Lieutenant Primin greet Odo?
Constable Odo, good morning to you.
It's just, that is something that I've noticed a few times in this episode. People just really over-exaggerate their responses. It's so...
I really liked it for Primin, though, because I think we've only seen him in one episode so far.
That's
he
right.
was the outsider, he was new on board, he's Federation, he is Starfleet, he does things by the rules, and he's loosened up a bit between episodes.
He has.
I think rather than inconsistency on the actor's part, they thought, well, maybe a few days or weeks have gone by, he's more at home now, and he's acting it. And I liked that a lot.
Yeah. I can see that, but it's still, for us, who this is only the second time we've seen him, the second episode he's been in, it just seemed, for me, really jarring. He would be Constable Odo, and he doesn't even look up. And it's just like, the one person I would never be pally and affectionate with is Constable Odo. The guy's about as affectionate as a cupboard, So it really just made me surprised.
It's a reasonable observation. It is very strange, but I think,
in character, I can totally see what you mean.
I think Primin is making an effort to get along with Odo rather than.
I think you're absolutely right.
That he is.
I think you're absolutely right, and I do like the scene with them, which is Odo saying, "Have you seen Commander Sisko?" And Bruin says, "Oh, well, that Wadi party went on quite late." I'm like, I'm not sure Starfleet is a job where you can just get a hangover and not call in. Especially if you're commander of the whole station. So what, am I supposed to think that Primin is currently in charge? Because there's no Kira.
Says that none of the senior officers have reported for duty this morning.
Exactly.
And you didn't find that odd.
Thank you, Odo. I would find it bloody odd.
But Odo goes on to interrogate him a little. How many years have you been a security officer, Lieutenant? 6 years. Why? Lost many commanders.
I love that line.
Because you've lost one now. Sisko's off the station. Missing. And Primin suddenly stands up and looks really worried. All the senior officers may be missing. So Odo orders a sweep of the station. And he wants Primin to contact all ships that have departed since last night. Again, they're going through protocol. There's a list of things that you do in a situation like this one.
Organised professionals.
And they state it on screen. They don't just go, Primin, do a search, do everything you would normally do. It's, no, I want you to do this, this, and the other. It's good.
It shows them being professional, and it shows that Odo is good at his job, which also seems to involve chewing out Primin for being incredibly lackadaisical about where the hell people are.
Which is fair enough when Primin's the only officer on Ops and no one else is there and he's not queried that.
It is staggering, but I do think they put it in mainly to give Odo a chance to really, as I put in my notes, kick ass and take names. So I very much enjoyed that, and I think Odo strides out of Ops, pausing only to turn around and say, "Don't call me Constable." It's just he will take it from some people. He will allow certain people to call him Constable, although I think he mentioned it in a previous episode where he
I
said,
think it was in the last episode, and we learned for the first time that it's a word of it's more a statement of fondness. It's a nickname.
Yes, it's not actually like a rank or anything, is it?
Yeah.
So
Chief of Security is his role, but Constable is just what they fondly call him.
An affectionate name, yes. And it's interesting that he's like, you don't get to call me that. They do, and they're all missing now. So you're going to help me find them. I liked it. I enjoyed that whole thing, but I love Odo, so yeah, very much enjoyed.
And the next scene, we're back at Quark's, and the Waddy are standing around playing with their clan pigs, and some of them are holding them like chopsticks, and they're snapping them at each other, and that may or may not be suggestive. We just don't know. Fellow asks Quark how much he wants to risk on the second shap.
Yes.
Quark asks if there's a minimum wager, and the Waddy all go, like, boring. So Fellow offers him the dice and tells him to roll. Quark complains he doesn't know the rules yet, and Fellow says he's required to learn as he plays, and the Waddy all start clicking their clan pigs rhythmically while they're waiting for Quark to rush. I should have brought some chopsticks through. And the dice are quite nice. They're little four-sided pyramids, so they always land as a triangle upwards. And they're all marked with figures in what is presumably Waddy-written language. Again, they're tiny little props that someone has very carefully drawn these little alien symbols onto for the few seconds that they're on screen.
Yes.
It's really sweet. They're probably sitting in someone's collection somewhere. The collection of someone who doesn't hate this episode too much.
Yeah, I would hope so. Can I just say as well that I do also find that the Waddy seem kind of weirdly antagonistic. I mean, I get that they're a bit affronted that they've been cheated and they take games very seriously, but they seem to relish in the fact that Quark doesn't know what he's doing. And I think they even take a certain amount of kind of twisted pleasure in the fact that he doesn't know he's playing with the lives of his crewmates. And I think they love the fact that Quark doesn't know what he's doing, and they won't explain things to him, and they want to see him suffer.
Definitely.
The whole thing, it's wacky and wild and crazy, but it also has that kind of tinge of real menace, I think.
It does, because we know, as you say, they're affronted that they've been cheated. We don't know how bad that affront reads to them, what lengths they're willing to go to restore honour or to get revenge. So the fact that we know that there are several crew members missing who are in a mysterious environment, which may be linked to this game, given that we've seen Fallow pop up there and shout the name of the game at them. Yeah. It is quite sinister, and it's that interplay of sinisterness, mischief, and playfulness that I really like. I like the ambiguity there.
Because you are a massive Q fan, we know you are mischief goblin of the galaxy.
But at this point in the game as well, I think throughout the episode there is some ambiguity about how the pieces on the board actually relate to the way that the players, as we later learn they're called, are able to wander around.
Yes.
It's, at this point I've written, it's not made at all clear how Fellow knows what the senior command staff are doing while he and Quark are in the bar, and how their actions interact with the game in the bar is unclear. I think that somewhere on the Waddy table there was a little command display.
There is some kind of console,
which Fellow looks down at. So I suspect that must be displaying something that relates to what the people who are the pieces are doing. And I think it's that display that he uses later in the game when he tells the game to select a piece at random to remove.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right.
But it is kept quite deliberately vague, so that Quark can't know, so that it feels mysterious to us as well.
100%.
And I like that. There's something... I don't know. Probably what it reminds me of actually is Nightmare, that children's TV show where 3 players were standing around a console and 1 player is in a virtual environment that they cannot see.
There is that's a deep cut. That is, good lord. There's an old memory. Okay, so after this Nightmare podcast, where we will go through every episode and tell them they should have stepped right instead of stepped left.
Dying dreams of children with their that was a terrible game. They lost so often, and it was so horrifying.
It really was quite horrendous. I think that says something about a certain kind of several generations of British kids who grew up just watching like a face come apart to reveal a grinning skull under it every night, like for like tea time television watching. I think that affected us, Kat. I think that affected us in a big way.
I don't feel normal about tornadoes even now. You know, they get a little tornado on screen that moves randomly, and the kids are yelling, "Go left, go right, no, go backwards!" While this kid with a massive helmet over their face is trying to avoid this this non-existent tornado
Oh
thing.
my god! Right, you are giving me the fear, so we're gonna have to move
That's
on.
probably how these players feel in the game. Cisco is unsuccessfully trying doors again when a child's voice, which is never reassuring to hear in this kind of situation, rips into his hearing. And the child's voice is saying, Allamaraine, count to 4, Allamaraine, then 3 more, Allamaraine, if you can see, Allamaraine, you'll come with me. And Cisco pops his calm and talks to the others, says he's found something. They join him, guided by their tricorders.
Yes.
And there's a little girl chanting the chant while hopping across triangles on the floor. Yeah. And they try to, I think someone tries to walk across the floor, and there is a force field in the way. They get rebuffed.
It is Bashir, and I haven't got a picture of it here, but there is a dreadful picture.
It's actually, oh no, it's first Kira. Kira tries to cross
Kira
the
goes
floor
first.
to the next door. She hits the force field, which apparently is painful.
Yes.
But doesn't do any lasting damage. She recoils and goes, and then recovers.
That's right.
Dax has some kind of ionic field. Cisco notes that this little girl can go straight through it. Bashir notices that the girl steps only on certain of the triangular panels.
That's right.
So Bashir says, watch this. And then he follows her footsteps and he bashes into the force field.
Yes.
And he says, but I did everything she did.
Yes.
And Dax corrects him. He didn't say the rhyme. So then Dax, very bravely and looking very foolish, hops across, following the little girl, chanting the rhyme. And Dax actually adds the hand movements. Yes. I think they're meant to be. I only noticed this when watching back. The little girl is so focused, bless her, on saying the words and hopping her feet in the right onto the right triangles that she doesn't do the little hand movements that Dax then does. A little bit of continuity error that Dax has to effectively invent these hand movements. Yes, it's Allamaraine, count to 4, Allamaraine, then 3 more, Allamaraine, if you can see, Allamaraine, you'll come with me. And Dax hops across successfully. So then Kira and Cisco have to sing the little rhyme and do the little skipping downs. It's great. I love it. It's fantastic. It's so silly. And all of them, I think, just say the little rhyme. But bless him, Cisco going, Allamaraine, count to 4, Allamaraine. Then he sings it because he's invested.
He is. He is a professional actor, and he will deliver. And you don't know if the force field might knock you out if you don't sing enthusiastically. Why not?
Right. I loved this scene. I thought it was really cute.
I am glad.
It's not like anything else in Star Trek.
I would absolutely agree with that. I will give you that. Personally, I found it the most cringe-inducing thing I've ever seen. My notes here say, Allamaraine, Jesus fucking Christ, this is like an LSD-fueled 80s music video. I got massive vibes of Safety Dance, a song I am renowned for hating. And the music video for that is very similar, where lots of people just they recreate it by doing like S, A, F. There's a lot of posing, and it's horrendous. And this is exactly the same. It's the same kind of just absolutely maniacal, childish, just incoherent nonsense. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Personally, I found it the most boggling, skin-crawlingly awkward thing I've ever seen. So we represent a good spectrum of Star Trek fans, I think. That's where the heart of our podcast lies, in between your embracing of these fun moments and my grizzled ancient hatred of anything fun in Star Trek.
The watchers of this podcast who might not know us as people, Tim and I have one other area where our lives intersect. We both play music on the goth scene. Tim plays serious goth music, which is very good. I play comedy ukulele goth songs,
which is very good.
If I ever get the opportunity to support you and sing an awful little skipping rhyme and insist that everyone in the room has to do it with me, I'm gonna.
Please
and you'll enjoy it.
Oh my God.
No one would join in.
Because they will. Everyone we know will. And the whole room will do it. And I will die. I will die 1,000,000 times.
Oh, great. We're doing it. We're weaponising Allamaraine. It's happening.
Okay. Well, there's an extra reason for me
Move
to
along
hate
home, Tim. Shap 3.
Slap 3. Move along home. Another reason to hate this episode is that it's going to actually embarrass and crucify me in real life. Fantastic. Thanks so much, DS9.
But yes, they all hop across the floor, and then as they've stepped through the door, the girl walks up to her and says, Allamaraine, third shap, and smiles at them before the door closes over her. Follow and the other waddy in the bar shout, Allamaraine! And Quark is handed his winnings, which are sparkly, sparkly gems. Makes him very happy. And oblivious to the plight of Cisco and the others, he says, I think I'm getting the hang of this.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely brilliant.
In the background, the Waddy are still showing each other their clonpeags because they're fucking obsessed with their long twiglets. Quark has to choose whether to take his pieces on the short or the long path. The short path doubles the peril to the players and doubles the winnings. But Follow adds that if no players make it home, Quark loses everything. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, at this point, Quark tries to negotiate with Follow to have gaming tables installed on the second floor.
Oh, God, yeah, he does.
Because even though he's playing with people's lives, he's already searching for the next business opportunity.
He is a good Ferengi.
He is. At which point Odo comes in, and in the background of the shot, Odo walks in, and there's a male Waddy standing very close to Odo, I think he's just a background actor. He had nothing to do, so he just stands there looking Odo up and down with tremendous curiosity. It's really sweet. There's nothing to stop him doing it. And it's like, yeah, he's probably never seen an Odo before. Nobody has. Odo's like there grilling Quark, asking whether he's seen any of the 4 officers who are missing. And this one is just going,
Who's this guy?
But yeah, Quark kind of puts 2 and 2 together to make the 4 players and the 4 pieces.
I think Odo does as well. I think they both have that kind of moment of recognition. They both kind of turn with horrified looks on their faces to go, this is one of those Starfleet weird scenarios where they all get turned into game pieces or something like that. It's one of those, isn't it? I love that they have that moment of recognition.
But yes, Follow then repeats, double their peril, double your winnings, bet or leave. And I really like this. There's a moment of vulnerability from Quark. He looks at Odo and very quietly, not in his usual blustery voice, he says, Odo, how about taking my place? Huh?
Yeah.
He's genuinely nervous. He really doesn't want to have to make a decision on this now, having realised what's going on. And he chooses the safer path, which I think is it's big of him as a Ferengi to not take the choice that will result in
It goes against his instincts, which will be, maximum gamble, maximum return. But he realises that actually he's gambling with something far more valuable and dangerous, and it is a quick break of, forgive me, humanity for Quark.
And I get the impression it isn't played as if he's just frightened of what Odo will do to him, which it could have been. It could just have been Odo is here and is going to yell at me, beat me up, have me arrested. It isn't. He genuinely is within himself struggling over this.
Yeah, it reminds me of Babel, when there was only him and Odo on the station and they had to eject the damaged ship. And Quark there was honestly worried, not for himself like you would expect, but he was worried for the station and for Odo, who would have been hurt by the explosion. So I think it is that tiny hidden part of Quark that actually cares. Shh, don't tell.
But yes, he's made the decision that they're going to go on the long path to keep them safer. So back in the game, the crew deciding what's going on as they walk along a corridor. Dax points out that home is often the destination in a game, and Kira remarks that the Waddy do love games, because of course Fallow turned up and said move along home once. And yeah, once again, I got a little sidetracked wondering how the universal translator works here, whether there is a word that means both the dwelling where you live and the base spot in lots of games, whether that translates into lots of different languages, or whether, I don't know, whether it's only one meaning or the other. And I don't think there is an answer, because I don't think the writers have considered this is one of those things that the universal translator allows you to completely sidestep and treat it only in English.
Star Trek is great at pouring loads of detail into some things, and then other things asking you to take a massive leap of faith and suspend acres of disbelief just to kind of let the episode click on.
Well, to be fair, as you're watching the episode, it's engaging, it is moving along a pace.
Yeah.
It's only when you sit down to analyse the script that you think, hang on a minute, how would that translate into the other cultures and languages? I'm not convinced. So yeah, again, it's only when assholes sit down to really enjoy DS9 that they start to pick holes in it. Dax points out that they've been given directions, clues, obstacles to overcome. Cisco darkly remarks, pawns.
Oh, yeah, I missed that. Oh, excellent. That is such an excellently delivered Cisco line. I like that. That is very good.
And a door opens and they enter a party full of Waddy who are all, I think it's the same Waddy who are in Quark's bar, the same people appear in two places at once.
Yes, it is.
They're standing around drinking. I initially thought it was an orange drink. It's actually a clear sparkling drink in orange glasses. Kira starts kicking up a fuss, asking them, "What's wrong with you people?" and throwing a plate of fruit on the floor, and generally being Kira, being very annoyed that these people are standing around laughing and drinking when they're trapped in this space.
I love this. Can I say that a smoke-filled room full of chortling people who sneer at you dismissively and ignore you kind of reminds me of more than a few goth clubs, I'll be honest. But it was just a general familiarity, nothing specific, but just a certain familiarity. But please, I do love it. I love that Kira bombs a tray at the floor and is furious in people's faces. It feels natural. It feels believable. I think a lot of
it feels exactly how she'd behave, and it emphasizes the straits that they're in. That we can watch them moving from room to room. But for them, they don't know what to expect. They don't know what dangers coming up next.
100%. No, I loved it. I loved it.
And as you say, the room is gradually filling with smoke, which we're shown is entering through a vent in the wall. Bashir goes to one of the people one of the waiters who's handing out drinks, and Cisco takes it away from him, puts it back on the tray and says, "Don't eat or drink anything," which made me think Cisco is familiar with both dangerous situations and Earth folklore. If you're among the Fae, don't eat or drink anything. You're going to get trapped in the world that you've been taken to. So it's a good story tradition that if you're in a weird place, you don't accept food or drink. Cisco knows this. Bashir doesn't.
He does not. And I like the thought of humanity taking those very old human kind of traditions to the stars. Sure, we've met people from other worlds, but we still know certain rules and covenants that existed long before we even knew how to, go up a flight of stairs, let alone get to the stars. Some things just have carried with them. I love that. I love that read. Excellent.
Cisco starts saying that maybe it's drugged or poisoned, but at that point the smoke starts to overcome the crew. They all start coughing. It's good realistic coughing that they do. I feel a little for the actors because however many times this scene was shot, it's really harsh having to cough. And they do a very good job of it. It's very convincing. Following the other Waddy from the bar in the party game, let's see. Yes, Fallow is laughing and he offers Cisco a drink and continues laughing.
Yes.
And then says, move along home. And Cisco's quite irate and goes, "You brought us here. You take us home."
Again, reasonable.
Bashir goes for his same gambit again. He grabs a drink from a passing tray and takes a long draft. He realizes that it's an antidote. And there's a nice little sequence. He passes the same glass along to Kira, who takes a sip. And then Dax is really struggling, so Kira holds the glass up to her mouth. And helps her
they supported each other, yes.
Yeah, it's really nice. And I like that it's a subtle thing, but I like they did it in that order as well. They didn't have Bashir hand the glass straight to the woman that he's been trying to bed for many episodes. They don't have him supporting Dax. He helps Kira helps Dax. It's more cooperative than it is lecherous, which is very appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. It also feels more like they are just professionals trying to solve a problem rather than, more of a drama or sitcom assembled cast where, those kind of relationships drive everything they do, even in an unfeasible situation where they are fearing for their lives. He's like, "Oh no, I'll be the gentleman, give you the antidote first." It's really kind of lazy writing, so they get around that there. I'll give them that. Yeah,
they do well with it. And Cisco sees what they're doing and he grabs a glass of his own and has a drink. The Waddy then all clap, but I noticed that instead of clapping palms down, they actually clap like this.
Yes, that's it. Yes, backs of hands.
Partly, I think, because lots of them are still holding glasses.
Yeah, that probably helps. Yeah,
holding a glass, and partly because it's a bit more alien. It's less human. So they all start clapping. And then Fallow says, "Shap 4!" and all of the party goes and smoke, disappear in an instant, leaving the 4 crew members. And I've written, it's not clear how this would have affected the game on the board. We can guess that Fallow, having been present in the game more than once, can see everything that's happening in both places, but it remains relatively ambiguous. In the bar, Follow moves the pieces down to the fourth shap and shouts, Allamaraine! At which the woody cheer and clap their clump beaks again. Odo leaves the bar and Quark looks in delight at one of the crystals that he's presumably just won.
I made it in my notes as well. He seems now he's kind of like weirdly back into he's back to being a natural Quark, which is I'm playing a game and I'm winning. Great, okay, so he's kind of like gone, okay, maybe I can actually win this game and save the crew. I don't know, it jars a bit where in the previous scene he seemed to realise what was going on and was worried. And now he's just like,
yeah, oh, I think it is just that now that it seems as if things are going well again.
Okay. Yeah.
His norm has been reestablished. It's like, oh yeah, winning streak, winning crystals. Yes. I think you just can't be distracted for very long from the pursuit of shinies.
I think you're absolutely right.
Back in Ops, Odo and Primin are at the console, and Odo is looking for signs of the missing crew on the Waddy ship, which is a sensible move.
Yeah, I like that.
Primin whether a scan would usually pick them up, and Primin points out they've never encountered Waddy technology before. How would they know?
Very sensible.
Odo has spotted a flux on the second deck. Primin says it's some kind of intense bipolar current, and the only thing that DS9 has, which would put out that kind of energy, would be a transporter. But a transporter burst would only last for a few seconds. So Odo says he's going to go and take a look. Primin says that he can't just go storming onto their ship without permission. Starfleet. Odo asks if that's Starfleet's policy, and Primin says, that's right. And Odo replies, well, I'm not in Starfleet. Set the coordinates. Is it against Starfleet policy to press a few buttons? And Primin does.
Again, can I just point out that I appreciate that Odo is stressed and worried, but again, it seems like such an over-exaggerated reaction. I love it. I love that he says, well, I'm not in Starfleet. I love it. But again, I don't, Odo's always been this cool, calm, collected, dry, dismissive
the four
kind of...
senior officers are missing, Tim. He doesn't know whether they're alive or dead. He knows that the Waddy are to blame. Yeah. I think he's being frustrated that Primin isn't supporting him in that moment is very much right for the action that's being shown.
I can take what you mean there, absolutely. But again,
and Odo wasn't there for the whole Allamaraine malarkey. He doesn't know.
No, he has no idea what's going on. No, you are absolutely right. I still can't take the feeling that it's a little bit out of character, even though I do also love it, because again, I love it when like this by the book, pencil-necked jockey from HQ with his rules and his regulations comes around, and Odo's like, man, I ain't playing by your rules. This is the frontier, man. We make our own rules. I love that. I love that, and I love Odo.
I love that they've kept that dynamic in.
Yes, it is great. It is great, and I love that Odo is getting to be the hero as well. Again, he's going to absolutely break the rules and potentially put himself in danger by going to the Waddy ship, but he doesn't hesitate. He knows what he has to do, and off he goes. Again,
this is one of the episodes where his morals are very clear and very unambiguous.
I do like that a lot.
So Odo arrives aboard the Waddy ship. He opens a door and there's a bright blast of white light coming from it. He recoils for a little bit and then darts in, and he finds himself back in the bar, back at Quark's a few feet from the Chula table. And he's exasperated by this point. He says that the game ends now. Follow says, stop the game, lose your players. And Quark tells Odo pleadingly, Odo, just stay out of it. Again, he's quite quiet at this point. Odo, just stay out of it. I'm doing fine. They're doing fine. But I think there is an undercurrent of worry there from Odo.
I got that, definitely, 100%.
Yeah.
He knows he is gambling with people's lives in a game he still doesn't truly understand. He is clearly playing on his nerves, and that is, I guess, kind of where he excels. But at the end of the day, there is that realm of uncertainty. He doesn't know if he's going to make the wrong move, what's going to happen.
And there's also guilt there in this situation because he cheated them. These people are angry because he cheated them. If anything goes wrong, it is his fault.
It is his fault.
But Odo gives a warning, Quark, and Quark chooses the safer path instead of choosing the more dangerous path yet again. In my notes, I've actually said that Odo rolls, but I don't think that's right. I think it's Quark who rolls consistently.
No, I tell you what it is. Quark offers the dice to Odo and asks him to blow on the dice.
That's the next roll. That's not this one. Yeah.
I do apologise.
The roll after this one, which is a really cute moment.
I loved it. Yeah, that's why I want to see it, because I love that moment. This is the occupational hazard of Deep Space Wine. We are not 100% on top of our notes at all times. The next thing I have is, Bashir falling foul of a bad roll. So,
Yes.
is that the next?
Yeah, I think what I've got is that Bashir and Kira discuss the nature of the game. Kira is frustrated with how unclear it all is, and Bashir says, "But we've gone from the first to the second to the third to the fourth
Yes,
shap
that's
already."
right. Yes.
And Kira asks, "And what is a shap?" And Bashir doesn't know, but at least they're making progress.
So
Kira
optimistic.
complains that they're playing for their lives, and Bashir isn't taking it seriously enough. And he smilingly replies that actually, I find the stakes to be highly motivating. He's a very silly man.
It's very polite of you, Cat.
But yeah, the next bit really is quite threatening. They hear a machine noise, which is increasing in volume. Dax reads high magnetic field variations, intense flux patterns. It's coming towards them. Cisco tells them to find cover if they can.
Yeah.
And we see a strange hovering metallic shape floating before them. We then cut to Fallow moving his hand in front of the 4 game pieces on the board.
Let me cut to that now.
Oh, yeah.
The Chula pieces, which represent our senior staff.
Yes, each one is one of the different characters. And a bright light shines in the game, which moves from which moves to each character in turn with the camera. There's this spotlight that gets turned on each of them, and the characters all kind of recoil from it slightly. It goes to Dax, and then it returns to Bashir. And at that moment, Fallow picks up the dark blue player piece from the board and moves it off the raised chap to the surface of the game table. In the game, we see the lights move towards Bashir, who just disappears. Cisco shouts, "Fallow!" and Fallow's finger knocks the Bashir piece on its side. Yeah.
It's a very dramatic scene, actually. I like that iconography. It links them, and it, for me, represents that their lives are literally represented by these small, beautiful, but small, utterly impersonal models. And it kind of drives a bit more urgency into the story, that you suddenly realise how powerless they are, that they can just be so easily picked up and put on the side. And Bashir's just disappeared.
Absolutely. And that Fallow personally has that power, that his hand reaches out and snuffs out one of them.
That's it. 100%.
Odo asks, "What happened to that one? Why is it there?" And Fallow just says, "Next move. Choose your path." Odo insists that he wants that player back, and Fallow says that if Odo wants to play after Quark's done, it can be arranged. The idea that this game could go on indefinitely to gain and lose more pieces.
That's a worrying thought.
Happily, the episode is only 45 minutes long. Quark chooses the shortcut, arguing that it's the right thing to do. He happens to earn double on the roll if it goes well for him. But he says, "Look, it's more than that. Look at the board. The shortcut skips a whole level. I've learned that there are risks in every roll of the dice. This way they can advance all the way home on just one move. Trust a gambler." And it's at that point that Quark offers Odo the dice and says, "Blow on them."
That's
Odo
right.
just looks irritable and doesn't want to, and Quark insists. Very angry, but it's so cute.
It
I think
is
it's just really
adorable.
sweet that Quark wants some of Odo's look on that important role.
It is a beautiful scene, and I love that Quark will, he's done so well so far, but he's actually going to reach out to somebody he knows and be like, "I need your help," even in his own kind of unique Ferengi way, which is, maybe you could help this very risky move pay off. Because I know you and I trust you in a weird way. You could read a lot into that, I feel.
Yeah.
I liked it too. But it doesn't pay off, does it, Kat?
It does not pay off. Quark makes the roll, and Fallow says, "Tialo, sacrifice one so that 2 may live." And Odo looks at Quark, who just looks horrified and lost at this moment. And Odo says, "You can't ask him to do that." Fallow says, "If you don't sacrifice one, all 3 will be lost." Quark says, "I can't, please." Fallow insists, "Which player?" And Quark goes to reach for the pieces and says, I can't do it. I beg of you, a terrible mistake has been made. Not I've made a mistake. A terrible mistake has been made.
Mm-hmm.
And this moment he just completely falls apart.
He
He gets
goes to
down on his knees and he offers up his hands as if in shackles. Please! And he just shouts, please! Please! Multiple times. I think in other contexts the scene would be tremendously full of pathos.
Yeah,
He's genuinely suffering at this moment. He
Yeah.
doesn't want to have to choose a member of the command team
to
destroy because that's what he believes is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And Fallow and Odo peer down at him over the table while he kneels there,
which throws the whole thing for me because I'm like, yeah, we also perceive that there is danger there. This whole thing has been written with a certain amount of menace, so yeah, presumably this is it. But then that whole scene is played with Armin Shimmerman's Quark, quite torn up about this decision. And then at the end of it, it's like, oh, what's that funny guy doing under the table? I'm like, I'm sorry, am I meant to be taking this seriously or not? Is Quark sincere?
You're right. The way the scene is directed undercuts the tragedy in Quark's position.
Okay.
I think from Quark's point of view, everything is absolutely dreadful and it is horrendous. But yeah, having the other two characters just kind of peer down at him over the table, it adds a comedy to the moment. It makes it clear that Quark is suffering. It's Quark's fault. It's actually kind of funny, I think is what they're going for in the way it's shot.
That was not what I thought they wanted me to think, but okay, here we are, Very strange, very strange.
They're trying to match two very, very different moods and to retain the ambiguity until the last scene. Yes. The characters are in real danger in a terrible environment.
Yes.
And Quark is playing a game and he's cheated and it's going wrong for him now. It's two very disparate ideas, which I think they weave together pretty well for most of it. But yeah, at that moment it does feel quite jarring because Quark. Why do I keep mixing their names up? Because Quark is here. But yes, Fallow eventually relents. Quark won't have to choose a piece. He will instead program the game to select one at random. And I've put the Clon Peaks click unnervingly. Back in the game, Kira is complaining, we should have eaten something at the party when we had the chance. Which reminds us that we don't know how long from their perspective they've been stuck in the game. It isn't clear that there's a time dilation effect going on, but there may well be. They don't know how long they're going to be trapped there because they don't know that there's a board game being played out above them.
No.
Bashir has disappeared, but his voice starts shouting from an unclear direction, Commander Sisko!
Mm-hmm.
The three spread out as he calls, I can see it, I found the way home!
Mm-hmm.
Dax thinks she can hear him through an open door, so she dashes through it. And that space is full of large rocks. She starts climbing over them, but the room begins to shake and a rock falls, trapping her leg. Sisko and Kira join her. Bashir's voice continues to call them, and there is a figure obscured by light standing in a high doorway. So it looks as though this is Bashir calling to them. Sisko appeals to Bashir's sensibilities by saying, Dax is hurt, implying that Bashir should come back and help them.
Yeah.
And instead, Fallow steps out of the light and says, Tiano, move along home. Shap, 6. And I've noted here that just props to Joel Brooks, who plays Fallow. He's given a lot of nonsense to deliver.
Yes.
And he does it with a really nice variety of gravitas and whimsy. I think he matches well the tone of the scenes that he's in, and he keeps that ambiguity going. He could be an extremely dangerous man, or he could just be a mischief maker.
It is very ambiguous, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that is a testament to some very good acting. Yes, well observed, and thank you for noting the actor's name because I always miss that. But yes, Joel Brooks. Thank you, Joel. Excellent. With your Space Laszlo character, I enjoyed very much.
Laszlo. Kira's tricorder tells her that they're over a fault line between two ground masses that are undergoing tectonic shift. The cabin walls are not going to hold. So Sisko and Kira support Dax to limp out of the room. And there's a fairly long sequence where they're traveling along a rocky tunnel and then along a ledge.
Yes.
And there's a bit where the camera is watching, from fairly close by, the camera is watching the three characters creeping along a ledge. There's a rock wall behind them and presumably a drop in front of them. Yes. But from where the camera is positioned, we know full well that the camera is standing on the floor at the same level as the actors.
Yes.
They're not climbing. They're just walking along as if they've only got a foot of space to walk in. And they do a great job of it. They move awkwardly. They act very well there, given that the set is nowhere near as dangerous as it's meant to look.
I did feel like perhaps they'd built this rock set and they were determined to get as much out of it as they possibly could. So they filmed a very long sequence with a lot of bits happening of rocks falling, people getting their legs stuck, and this dangerous ledge that is clearly about a foot off the bottom of the soundstage. So it is a little bit clumsy. I was not at all impressed with this sequence, I must admit, but thank you for flagging it yourself.
Same here. I think it's my least favourite bit of the episode, and it does last quite a while. There are a couple of shots where Cisco leans over to look below the ledge, and at that point we see a computer-generated chasm below him. But yeah, we've got a few more things happen. The space keeps shaking. There's always a risk that they're going to fall. There's quite a nice exchange where Dax points out that the other two might be able to jump across the chasm.
Yes.
And Kira says they're not going to leave Dax there. Dax says to Cisco that 7 lives is more than enough for a trill, and you haven't even finished one.
Yes, I made
And
note of
Cisco
that.
replies to Dax, "Yeah, how could I live out that life, knowing that I left you behind, old man?" Which I like. I always enjoy when Cisco.
I do, and I love that they've started that already. And it's a great interplay between these two people. Obviously, Dax is having none of it, and with a uncharacteristic kind of coldness, says, "Don't let sentiment get in the way of command decisions." And Cisco finishes it with her and says, "I seem to recall, some good advice along those lines." And it's clearly, I think, a callback to Curzon, Jadzia's predecessor, previous host, and it's a reminder again. It's a snatched moment to remind us of this relationship that Dax, the symbiont, has with Cisco, which I also always enjoy. And it's a Star Trek line as well, which is always you've got to be a responsible leader. You're responsible for your crew. You can't, sacrifice everyone to try and help one person, which Star Trek 9 times out of 10 completely subverts by letting you sacrifice, gamble everything, and save everyone. Hurrah! Huh?
The real treasure is friendship.
That's the Star Trek way, 100%. But I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that little.
It's a sweet little exchange in a rather boring sequence.
Yep.
But yeah, Cisco insists that, let's see. Cisco tells Kira to jump across, and he and Dax will find a way around, but instead Kira supports Cisco to help Dax. And Cisco replies, "Major, I gave you a direct order."
Yes.
Kira says, "Court-martial me." And Cisco says, "I can't, you're not Starfleet."
You're not Starfleet.
And Dax says, "If I were a superior officer, I would court-martial the both of you."
I love it.
Just a nice little tiff between them as they're trying to get out of this damn cavern.
And they're all bickering and getting there despite the bickering. It's very believable about these people who, we've got to remember, have only just started working together. They're only a few months into this collaboration. They're already dealing with just the weirdest, craziest stuff that they've all, had to deal with before. And it's good. It's good. I think, if anything, it kind of is slightly more enjoyable because it's surrounded by all this interminable cliff struggling. Oh no, we're in danger of falling and spraining our ankle. It's just, it is such a fucking interminable sequence that I grab onto these moments and love them.
Yeah, it's a very boring setting for a very nice little bit of character work. Anyway, it ends with them all falling off a ledge.
They do.
And then they all land on their feet in Quark's bar.
Hooray!
I really like the shot where they do, because the actors all very convincingly land and fall forward.
Yes, I should
Which
have
means
pulled
that
that
they've been told to jump in the air so that they can then cut the scene and make it look as if they landed.
It is very believable.
It is. And Quark exclaims, "They made it! I won!" Cisco looks furious.
Understandably. And is this the point where Fallow utters that immortal line? Or is it slightly later when somebody says they're okay, they weren't at risk, and Fallow says, "Of course, it was only a game." And at that point, I personally saw red and thought, if I was Cisco, I would punch that man across the bar. I would be furious.
That did cross my mind as well. He's punched Q before. He's got nothing to fear from punching
100%.
demigods. Just fucking punch this guy from the Gamma Quadrant.
Punch him.
It's clearly a dick.
Punch him. And again, it's that jarring. I don't know if that was the intention of the writers, but it's that jarring. Oh yeah, all the drama you saw here. Oh no, none of it was really there. It was all a laugh. And I'm like, no. Actually, That was worrying. There were times when we worried, the crew worried, it was worrying. Don't just fucking undercut the whole thing.
Oh, bless you.
And I was ready to punch. So that's why I'm
I,
not a Starfleet
I
commander.
liked it. I think it was quite nice for emphasising perhaps a moral chasm between the Wadi and our friends, the DS9 crew.
Yes.
It made them sufficiently. It made them get more alien. It emphasised that it was an act of revenge on their part. They'd been cheated. They decided to get revenge on Quark, and they did it in a really psychologically astute way by appearing to have endangered several of his crew. Yeah, I think it held together really well. And I think I wasn't annoyed by that conceit at the end that actually they were never in danger. I think that the outrage that Sisko feels is very valid. He's right to be absolutely annoyed. He stayed up for 6 goddamn hours watching these idiots play games, and when he finally went to go to sleep, he gets dragged into one of the games. It's not been a good day for anybody.
It has not. It has not.
But I enjoyed it. But again, I like that kind of ridiculous mischief. I like the idea of omnipotent characters, and they're just silly little guys who want to play silly little games.
They are.
They're quite charming about that.
Yeah, they are. Hey, they're just little guys. We're just silly little guys. And it works every time. We can't help but, well, speak for yourself. I don't have quite the same affection that you have for Q, but I do see the appeal, although personally it does make me more like Ben Sisko, just really want to hit somebody because it's nonsense and I'm not here for nonsense.
Speaking of Sisko wanting to hit somebody, before he can take up his complaint with Fallow, Odo points out that he might want to ask Quark how it all started. But Sisko looks enraged.
He does, doesn't he? He actually looks like he could kill.
And here I noticed occasionally, my God, a Sisko actor, his name.
Oh, Avery Brooks is
Avery
the actor.
Brooks. Brilliant name, thank you. He occasionally pronounces words subtly differently from other members of the cast. And at this moment, he says, Quark! Which usually everyone pronounces it Quark.
Yes, you're right. There was
I don't know if it was then, but it's now an American brand name of cheese, as well as being a microscopic, subatomic particle.
Subatomic particle.
But yes, he pronounced it Quark, which I think gives us more permission to pronounce it in a more Yorkshire way.
Hey!
Normally do. Quack! And Quark tries to make out that the Wadi had a run of bad luck, and they blamed him for this. And Odo insists, that's not what you said while you were grovelling on the floor.
Quark says, oh, that's right, you weren't here for the grovelling. I do. That is a brilliant line, again delivered so well by Armin
just
Shimon.
working out in the moment what he can get away with and realising, oh no, you were here for that bit.
That is brilliant. I absolutely relish that moment. And again, it's testament to Armin Shimon, who we've already established as a brilliant actor, and he plays it so well, that kind of, oh yeah, you saw when I was, please.
He really does, and through such a heavy face of makeup, he's got a mouthpiece for the Ferengi teeth.
Yes.
He's got a massive brow.
Huge.
He's only got a very small range of facial movement, and he uses it to great effect.
100%, absolute, brilliant work by Armin. Yeah, really treasure him as an actor, and. Yeah.
Odo reminds him that you said something about cheating, didn't you? And Odo said, I would have said anything to end the ordeal. It was too much for me to bear. You've no idea the pressure I was under, Commander, appealing to Sisko. And Fallow just interrupts with, if you will excuse us, perhaps someday a rematch. And the Wadi leave, and Quark, there's a lovely shot. The Wadi leave the bar, and the camera follows Quark as he follows them out. So Quark walks out, and you see Quark behind various gathered, the four players are standing in Quark's bar. So they're in focus in the foreground as Quark follows the Wadi around behind. They just make a lovely use of that circular bar set.
They really do. Once again, it's something we've always noticed, but the bar set is so well built that you can go anywhere in it and have a great new angle that gives you what you've seen before, but it mixes it, and it's, I've got to admit, again, better than they used the 10 forward set in TNG.
Definitely.
or engineering or the bridge.
I'm pretty sure the reviews in the 10 forward set that you don't see because they're where the camera stands.
Yeah, 100%.
Whereas this is a 3-dimensional, multi-story set
structure.
without any walls unpainted for the cameras to stand against, or open space into the rest of the studio. It looks like a closed set, and they make very good use of it consistently.
Yep. No. Thoroughly enjoy that use of the set, as we've mentioned time and again, and I'm sure we always will, because they are always endeavouring to introduce new camera angles into the show, which I love.
Yeah, it's nice that they put so much creative effort into something that's previously been quite stagey.
Yes, absolutely.
But they're making a new thing of it and putting a lot of effort into doing so. When they didn't have to, they could just have kept the old TNG style.
100%. They could.
But yes, the last 2 shots are of the 4 players in the foreground, all of them looking relieved that their ordeal is over, and the shot of the waddy ship flying off into the ether.
So again, as I've mentioned several times now, it kind of ended on a light note, which is, there's Quark trying to, get one last bargain out of them. And I'm like, again, we've been led to believe that the crew's lives are in danger. What am I supposed to be taking seriously? What's the joke? I feel on the back foot in terms of whether or not I'm supposed to be taking this seriously. I
think it could have been framed extremely differently. We could have ended on a shot that emphasised the trauma of the characters who were whisked away into an unknown world, went through various trials, over which it turns out they have no control.
No control.
We don't actually know whether their choosing to drink the drinks was an active part. There isn't a full explanation of how their actions integrate with the actions on the board.
No.
I think we can guess that what they are doing appears on the console in some form, and that determines whether the pieces can move forward or not.
Or fail the game, yeah.
But it is only a guess. It feels quite ambiguous. We could have ended with the characters reflecting on how unsafe they feel. They were whisked away in their sleep. Do they dare go to sleep again tonight until they've seen that the waddy ship has gone through the wormhole?
It's possible, isn't it? And I don't know how much of that is intentional on parts of the writers or how much was actually not intentional, and we are reading very generously into it and giving them credit where perhaps it was not due or might have been cut in production.
I think it's very light-hearted, but I think the fact that it did raise that tension in the episode, the fact that you leave it still feeling worried and concerned, is a testament to how well they raised tension in an episode that had a fucking skipping game in it. They mash a lot of things into this episode, and I think it's done very successfully. I think it is very tense. Wow. The danger is very palpable. We get to see Quark being unusually vulnerable, which is fully deserved, given that he's been cheating people ever since he discovered gaming. I think it all hangs together really well, and I enjoy it. And I don't, unlike yourself, I do not resent the light-hearted note on which it ends. I think it's quite nice to have and that was resolved, and everyone can go home and have tea and sandwiches. Or, as it probably is, it's probably mid-morning. They can go and wait a couple of hours before having a stiff drink.
Hopefully for their benefit. Okay, so the impression I'm getting, Kat, is that you've come away enjoying what many argue to be the worst DS9 episode, if not one of the worst episodes Star Trek has ever made. Would that be a fair conclusion?
I really liked it. I thought it was very sweet. I think it contained some good ideas.
Heard it here first.
The set building was nice.
It was.
Overall, I did really enjoy it. I think that, as you agreed, I think the cavern scene went on too long, possibly for it being a very dull grey set for all that it is.
Yeah,
it's
agreed.
Distinct, it's different. It's also not an interesting set to linger on for so long. But no, I liked it. I liked the interplay of the characters. I particularly liked the way that Quark was played in the episode. He got some different things to do.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I liked it. I think it fit the setting well. And I think probably what was intended with this episode was to show some of the scope of what we can expect for things and people coming through the wormhole. They're unknown, they're mysterious, they're mercurial. And what we can expect from the series, which is that it won't all be DS9 bottle episodes. Although, as we've said, most of them pretty much are. They're all set up on the station. There's very little action takes place elsewhere. And it's what I expect from much of the rest of the run, because as you've said, it's very character-based. It's about the characters and their dramas and the culture of Bajor. But yeah, definitely think this episode had a place at this point in the run to set up what is possible and to have a bit of light-hearted fun in between all the genocide.
Listen, no known species have been wiped out particularly recently, and I think we've got a long way to go before anybody else has to worry about being
It's
wiped
also
out.
been a little while since we've heard from the Cardassians, so we must be hearing from Goldie Cat before long.
I would not be surprised if that is very near in the future. I think that's coming up, and I think there are some particularly awful episodes coming up, awful in terms of heartbreaking, but we will spoil nothing more for Kat than that. Again, a reminder to chat, please do not spoil anything for Kat. They've not seen DS9, and that is the elixir that this podcast runs on, so as it would just be me grousing about episodes we've all seen before. So we will preserve that in amber. I'm just not going to change and say that I still find this episode very clumsy. It doesn't do the cast any favours. I think in part they're sometimes overwritten and they over-exaggerate some of their characteristics in a way that I don't think is part of what they're establishing now. Everybody seems to react far more aggressively, violently, dramatically to what's going on around them. I hate the skipping game. I hate how catchy it is. The Wadi are worse than One Hat Planet races that TNG introduces for one episode. And no, we don't see them again, and I'm not sad about that. It doesn't advance the characters as much as I would like. I think we go looking for the bright moments for their interaction because we're desperately scrabbling for some diamonds in the dark because everything else is just poor, sludgy, slow, and annoying.
I got the impression you didn't like it much, Tim.
Oh, I'm not a fan. In
the chat, Indoor
yes.
Cat says, I wish the Wadi came back.
I don't. Thanks, Cat.
Indoor Cat, they're great.
David points out that I just hate. I do just hate. It's so much easier to just dislike things. But no, I don't, however, think that it deserves the reputation it has as one of the worst Star Trek episodes. I don't think it's a very good DS9 episode. But that's because, as we move through episodes and seasons, you will find it's just very out of keeping with how DS9 is written as a far more intelligent show. I think it's...
it may be that when I've seen more episodes, I'll look back on this.
That will be interesting.
How were they thinking?
That might be interesting to revisit this, maybe in a couple of seasons' time, and think, how do you rate it now? But that's the point. The point is for you to see it now as somebody who's watching the first season for the first time and kind of get that initial impression. And your initial impression is totally valid and legitimate, which is that you actually had a good time and you thought it was a bit clumsy. Yeah. I think one thing I've always kind of dragged us back to as well is season 1 of a Star Trek show is always a bit clumsy. They always are struggling to establish the characters, the universe, the rules. And, you've seen season 1 of the original series, you've seen season 1 of The Next Generation. So again, I mean... How do you feel this compares to, say, like season 1 of TNG?
Yeah, I think I can understand how for some people this episode strikes them in the same way that Data learning how to whistle struck me. There's a very early episode. Data and Riker, I think they're either on a planet or they're in the holodeck on a planet. And Data's just leaning against something with his legs crossed and then leaps down Peter Pan-like and starts explaining to Riker how, I've always wanted to know how to whistle. It's such a human trait, isn't it? And he's so playful and he's so un-Data-like. And just because I've absorbed enough TNG in passing throughout my life.
This is exactly it.
Seeing that for the first time, it's like, oh my freaking God, they did not know what Data was, did they? And it's not the actor's fault. Ben Spike's doing his best with the script he's been 100%. Given. But it doesn't fit, and in retrospect, it looks terrible. But for people watching at the time, they wouldn't have picked up on that necessarily because they weren't familiar with that very iconic character in the form he would like to take. 100%. So, yeah, it's very possible that a few episodes or seasons in, I'll look back at this and think, they should have just booted the Wadi straight back through the wormhole.
Oh, wow. Cat the ever-embracing diplomat there.
Shove them where you keep implying your clump peaks might be shoved.
Oh, my God. That is wonderful. That's first contact.
But there is a lot to like in the episode, and not least things like the clump peaks, the set dressing. Yep. The way that the Wadi are a little bit lazy, perhaps. I think that they're probably wearing platforms. They're all very tall people. They're very shiny, their outfits, but they're otherwise fairly unremarkable. They haven't gone to the extent of putting big prosthetics on everybody.
No.
But yeah, they built sets. They built the game board, which is a big piece of kit, which is never used again.
I know, right? Unbelievable. And
So
such a
yeah,
shame because it is quite intricate. It's quite in depth. It is. They clearly
yeah,
put
that image
effort
that
into
you
it.
showed of the game pieces, you see that shot for a split second on screen, and the game pieces are just little pieces in the background in most shots. You don't
Hmm.
look at them again.
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of people have put a lot of good work into creating that episode, which
Hmm.
everyone hates. It's so sad. There probably is something of the. When I was a child, I once bought a teddy bear that didn't have a neck. Its arms were like attached right up to its head, and I insisted on buying it because it just looked so sad.
I
So there's
think.
probably something of I love this episode so much, and I do love it. And there's a lot of things I like about this episode because I know that it's not well liked, and I feel a bit sorry for it because it's not as bad as people say. It's only a bit terrible.
Kat, I think you are the voice of reason in all of this, and I grudgingly have had to admit that it's not as bad as I think its reputation makes out. It's not a good episode, but it's not quite the disaster area. I think some people compared it to like Spock's brain from the original series, or I think was it Rascals, or a similar nonsense episode of
So
TNG. You
these
know,
people without a sense of fun.
right? And this is it. They're the episodes that are fun, which I think Star Trek finds very difficult to do. At the end of the day, I think
I,
Star Trek has a sense of humor, but it's difficult.
I can imagine there's also something of there is a big difference between, or there can be differences between sci-fi and fantasy.
Yeah,
DS9 generally goes harder on the science, although I don't think the science is usually the focus of an episode in the way that the characters talk about the systems and processes. It's fairly hard science.
yes,
And episodes like this are far more fantastical. And I think the intention of the writers is that it's not necessarily fantasy per se, but that it's alien, it's other, it's from the Gamma Quadrant. It's
yeah,
something they cannot deal with using only their science. Although it was actually very generous of the Wadi to leave them with their tricorders.
yeah.
What do
That
they
was
do?
handy, wasn't it? And the communicators, and
Yeah.
their clothes, so they're not
I
just
mean, they were asleep in bed. They wouldn't have had these
space
things.
pajamas.
Do the Wadi normally equip everybody who goes through this game with equipment? I don't know.
That is a good
I think that
question.
probably is a case of it advanced the plot rather than being thought through.
I think you might be right.
But yeah, I think it's an episode that's meant to demonstrate the kind of nonsense we can expect to come through the wormhole and how difficult that is to deal with. But I can see that hardcore sci-fi fans will go, there's nothing sci-fi about this. This isn't science. This is just fucking nonsense. And I imagine that people who hate Q probably hate this episode.
I see. That's interesting. I like Q, and I do find him a very disruptive force. But there's always like method to his madness, and he just seems to feed into that wider universe. I sort of, yeah. He bounces off of the characters, whereas why do just rock up, make you play their bizarre game, make you think you might have died.
Offer you juice.
Yeah, just take the juice, man. And they've got their novelty chopsticks, and then they just go, right, good game, see you later, and off they fuck. And I'm like, what the? What was that?
You see, whereas that delights me.
There
I
you go.
like that Cisco has to deal with this kind of shit as well as with broken turbo lifts. It's just, it's great. It's rubbish, and I'm really glad I'm not there. I don't want to have to deal with this kind of crap.
Oh my god!
I don't like watching Bashir screaming and having to deal with this kind of crap. It's fun.
Back again. It has produced some very memeable moments. So in that aspect, I am very grateful that this episode exists. But I will not return to it with any haste.
And in the chat, Indoor Cat is saying that Voyager, I like Voyager, but they really manage some of the worst Star Trek.
Star Trek Voyager has probably the most peaks and troughs of any Star Trek show. They go from some of the very best storylines to some of the worst. They mentioned their lizards, which is a reference to Star Trek Voyager episode called Threshold, which is consistently voted one of the worst Star Trek episodes.
I've seen
Down
the
the
memes about that.
brain.
Is that the
Yes.
Salamander episode?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely, arguably one of just the worst concepts, both in terms of what the characters do and what it does with Star Trek lore, are both just laughably poor. But we are not on a Voyager rewatch, and we have gone past 2 hours, which is always kind of like our cut-off for discussing a 45-minute episode.
Every week, I think that we're not going to have that much to talk about, and every week we've got so much to say.
We do, and I feel we have delivered. I can't pass up this opportunity though to just point out that DS9's premiere was on January 3rd, 1993. So we have just passed DS9's birthday. That was when it was shown in America. We have a second birthday coming up in September when it was first shown in the UK, which I feel we have some run-up time so we can try and prepare and celebrate then. But just to say that, yes, we're now 31 years in since DS9 was first shown. 31 years. It's a staggering amount of time. And
I haven't skipped ahead in my viewing, but because I've been made aware by the internet in general. Unfortunately, this is 2024. I don't think we're going to get to see the Bell Riots episode this year.
Oh no, we won't. We won't. Heartbreak. Absolute heartbreak.
It's just too many season 1, season 2 episodes to go before we'll hit that one.
100%. Yeah. Is it season 3? Oh yeah. There's no chance. Even if we move to a weekly podcast, which is utterly unsustainable for either of us, there is no way we could get there in time. So. That is
we can see how accurate it was for 2024 in retrospect.
We can look back, absolutely. But I want to let everyone go. I want to thank Chat for joining in. I want to thank Kat again for joining me on this rewatch, and just you enjoyed, I guess, probably more than me this time.
Yeah, my enthusiasm is undimmed.
That's what we like. Fantastic. So thank you, Kat. Thank you, Chat. I will put this episode on YouTube as soon as possible, unless you are watching this on YouTube, at which point, come on, watch us on Twitch. Join us in the chat. We love to have newcomers join us in the chat and bounce stuff off of us. And
Indocast is super excited for the next episode.
How interesting. I do not know what the next episode is of.
The
Nagus. A Ferengi episode, right. 2 nonsense episodes back to back. That's going to be a lot of fun. We have that to look forward to. All things being as they are, that will hopefully be in a couple of weeks' time. So all I would say is just remain subscribed to twitch.tv/theblogginggoth or follow us on the YouTube. And thanks again for taking part in all of this. It is a lot of fun. We have a good time doing it, I think.
We do. Wonderful. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper, everyone. Take care.